Hello, everyone. We are here today with Stuart Winter-Tear for our episode 39, which is very exciting. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things today. AI includes all of them. Unfortunately, Alisa can't hear me for some reason, technical difficulties. She has no idea what I'm saying right now, but it's fine. Stuart can hear me, so we'll just be chatting in this very weird fashion. Stuart, please, a few words about yourself, if you will, for our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, no problem. I really get bored listening to myself and introducing myself. So it's boring for me, boring for you. So I'll just, just to give some credibility, I guess. Yeah, did 15 years of cybersecurity, did a lot of machine learning in that. For the last 2.5 years, just been focused on large language model products and obviously strategy and stuff like that for larger organizations. So yeah, that's it.
This is exciting. I mean, we've all we've been fans of your posts, especially recently. You've been churning them out quite
I
rapidly.
have no
Are you
social
using
life.
AI? Are
That
you
is my
using AI
social
by any
life. So
chance,
yeah.
Stuart? You're very fast. You're very productive with your posts. What's your secret?
Yeah, sometimes because there's so many research papers, so I do confess that you have to wait. You have to find a way to filter them. So sometimes I will upload a research paper to at least find if there's something in there that's interesting to
Mhm.
me, potentially interesting to people that read my stuff, and also I like to filter out those that are methodologically poor, unless I want to make a point that they're methodologically
Yeah.
poor. So yeah, but you can only put one, or if maximum two up, because they take time to read and digest, and yeah.
Yeah, as you mentioned as well, you have no social life, so
No.
that just adds up quite nicely, right?
Yeah.
So we can enjoy your content on the daily basis, which is very exciting.
Yeah, met
So,
some great people.
yeah, I mean, you've been very popular as of late as well. I
What
mean,
the weird
you've given a lot of talks,
Yeah, but the
not
weird thing
live
is,
ones.
yeah, the grumpier I become, the more sort of countercultural or counter zeitgeist I become, the more popular they seem to be. I think there's a narrow window right now. I think everybody's sick of hype, everybody's sick of doom, and there's a small window of opportunity right there to kind of come in with some, yeah, the technology is great, but these are the problems, this is the realism, this is not the realism, these are the
Yeah,
potential applications, and so on. So
yeah, I totally agree with you. So, why don't we start with? I mean, during the prep call, we talked about some of the topics that we wanted to discuss. Obviously, it's going to be much wider scope as of today since we're live anyway. So everybody tends to digress. So AI hype, as you said. What's AI hype for you? How do you define AI hype for you generally? Because when it comes to AI, as the one thing that I've realized a long time ago is like to different people, it means different things. You ask anyone under the sun what AI means for them, and they gonna give you totally different answers, and it works across the board with different people, different industries, and so on and so forth. So AI hype means different things to different people. What does it mean for you?
it's the same problem that I see in all spheres of life, especially on social media, and that is one simply of binary thinking. Okay, it's either great or it's evil. Okay, and there doesn't seem to be any nuance or middle ground, and I see hype on both extremes, which sounds absurd to say there's hype on the doom, but equally, there's a lot of popularity, and potentially rightly so, because we're all hype weary. It's the uncritical. Uh, Acceptance and delusion. I'm going to just call it out, delusion around this technology, where it's so anthropomorphized now that there's a blurring of the line, and this kind of AI can do everything. I mean, you've only got to read some of Sam Altman's posts, or Elon Musk. I'm just going to call them out. It's ridiculous stuff, if I'm honest. It's not a mythical elixir, it's a technology. Okay, and it has its flaws and its strengths, and it's a marvelous technology in my opinion. I bet my career on it. I think about it all the time. I love writing about it. But this sort of uncritical, it can do anything, everything, it's going to change everything, that to me is just hype and it's binary thinking. And that's probably how I define it in my head.
Okay. I mean, that was a very, very a good roundup of what it means. What about in terms of, everybody's talking ROI and where
Yeah.
we'll finally see the fruits of everyone's labor? Because, I mean, a lot of applications, tons of new LLMs, tons of new AI models are being released every single week as of today. We have literally hundreds of them. Where's the ROI? Where's the one good use case? Where's something what we can actually grasp onto?
Let's
What do you
just
think?
talk. Let's talk about ROI just in general. There's a real deflation around the expectations of ROI across organisations. I read the reports. They're right there in front of us. Okay. I'd like to talk about what's created this problem, and it's the wow factor of this technology and the hype, as we just said, that's gone behind it, has created the throwing away of the traditional wisdom, as if it doesn't somehow apply to this technology, as if AI is a special case. It doesn't need security, it doesn't need compliance, it doesn't need product thinking. Oh my goodness, this technology is so amazing. And what happens is that we end up with solutions in search of problems to solve, rather than as we've learned for so long in the digital era, which is, okay, what are the business problems, what are the customer problems, what are the problems, and is this technology a good fit for that as a solution? What we're doing is we're putting the cart before the horse, okay, all the time with this technology. And I understand why. I just want to say I'm sympathetic why, because it does have that wow factor, and also because of the FOMO and because of the pressure on boards, that downward pressure. We must be AI, we're going to get left behind, etc., which is potentially true. Okay. I'm not going to say what timeline, but that is potentially true. But it does create this technology first thinking. Okay. And this has been endemic in every cycle of these technology waves, where we've got these problems. Perhaps the organization has its own sort of dumpster fires, and we're just going to pin this technology on, and it's going to be the solution, rather than looking at the business drivers, the desirability from the user perspective, the feasibility of the technology, the viability in terms of the business driver, all the rest of it, all the things that should go before we select a technology that could potentially solve a problem. And so, like from an ROI perspective, this is I do a podcast. We just started actually with Vim Vashishta. If you're not following him, you should. He's got about 1 million followers, and what I love about him is he's got like a brain the size of a galaxy, and he's the consummate professional. But he's got a wicked sense of humour, and I do love that. It's easy to derail him. And what we talk about a lot is this sort of like strategic thinking that's being thrown out. And whenever we post about technology, AI specifically, that is creating ROI, Vin specifically focuses on the very, very large organizations. I'm more the middle to smaller size organizations, and it's all hidden behind NDAs and things like that. So I can give examples of terrific ROI. And when I say terrific, I'm talking 30% on the bottom line, or 30% cost reductions, and at scale that's quite significant, with things like even agentic AI being brought into very, very boring traditional industries, like making of cheese, and ensuring that water is appropriately whatever it is these people do. But there's the ability, there's so much data there's the ability to bring in these agentic systems and create significant ROI in terms of predictive analysis and industrial machine uptime and things like that. I've also seen the example of a global, I have to be really careful what I say, a global media household name in the UK that has hundreds of millions of visitors to the website daily, and they've now put in an agentic system to hyper personalize a subscription to get past the paywall, which has created a 30% uplift in subscription revenue. These are very, very significant. But I put a post out about it the other day. The problem is you can't talk about it. And so then it comes down to the credibility of the person that's posting it. And you either trust or you don't trust, and if people don't believe it, that's absolutely fine. They don't know me from Adam. But these conversations I'm having, the legal side. So a government, a massive government legal department, I'm not even going to say which country it is at this point, is beginning to use generative AI and agentic systems to be able to do massive summarization of massive cases, to be able to give those in the court system the ability to be able to summarize this data, and also I was involved personally in terms of the legal side of it. It was to do with the ability to be able to fact check, so not just across the corpus of data of the legal company itself, but to actually go out online to appropriate sources and bring that information back and fact check it against the internal corpus of data. So there are so many of these use cases, and what worries me is that when we swing now from hype to doom, what will happen is a lot of the executive boards may think, well, this was all nonsense anyway. But those quietly doing this, when that revelation kind of hits that they are doing it and they are seeing significant results on the ROI, they have transformed the data and the business to be able to take advantage of this technology. They'll be so far in front, they'll be impossible to catch up. So that's why it becomes so important to me to kind of get this middle ground in this hype and doom, so people don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but equally don't rush in thinking it can solve everything, because of course it can't.
But wouldn't you say that it's kind of, that would be an ideal world, so to speak, right? So people don't really rush into it. They're thinking things through. Everybody's so cautious and we're so ethical. We're so all around compliant and everything is so rosy. But it's not the case all the time. Like, as you mentioned, the cart in front of the horse thing, it's been like that for years and hundreds of years all the time. Why would this time be any different, right? And when it comes to ROI, I was also going to say this, but a lot comes down to AI diffusion, essentially, right? How well the technology is adopted, how many people are using it, what are they using it for. And a lot of the times, the cases, even when the use case is real, it's gonna help people in some circumstances. For example, I don't know, the facial recognition technology to scan and analyze truck drivers, right? Just to the point, like where they're about to fall asleep, is a lot of accidents and collisions, and that led to death cases were involved, where the truck drivers were involved, right? The ones that fell asleep. But there's been a lot of pushback from the community and the unions. I'm talking about the United States. I'm not sure about the other countries when it comes to this, right? So truck drivers are rather take the chances and die due to an accident than just use that technology, because the thought is they're gonna make us obsolete, they will be out of work, and so on and so forth. So the same comes to the seaport workers, right? The US is one of the few countries that still has workers working and doing stuff other countries utilize robots for, because of the unions, because people don't want to lose jobs and all of that. But kind of where's this middle ground? Where's this just kind of compromise for everyone? I don't think it's somewhere near inside even, unfortunately.
In terms of middle ground, in this perfect utopia world, bear in mind I did 15 years in cybersecurity, right? So I am naturally jaded. Okay, now I am old enough to have been around the birth of the internet, and in many respects, from a security perspective, this reminds me of the wild west of the internet in the early 2000s, when we just didn't know what kind of malicious activities were going to take place. Okay, now we don't even have that excuse now. We do know what kind of malicious activities are going to take place, and a lot of them are very similar. There are differences, but a lot of them are very similar. But it's almost like it doesn't apply. It's like just throw it out there. And I've already posted on the kind of, people were horrified. It was viral, but they're horrified. Steal an API key from GitHub and use somebody's OpenAI credentials. That's not the concern. The concern is that soon there'll be bots out there discovering forgotten agents that are still connected to corporate data, making decisions and operating in workflows inside the organization, that whoever set that up probably never had permission for in the first place, was probably just automated his own job and going out for a walk with the dog. Why not? But all forgotten, they leave, and they'll just still be sitting there. And all of these considerations, and I have a wonderful friend called Sarah Clark, who I actually consider to be probably one of the best in the world in terms of AI and governance. Okay. And she's tearing her hair out like I am, because it's kind of like nobody is thinking this through. So I just want to make it clear to anybody that kind of doesn't know me or doesn't read my post, that this sort of utopic middle ground, man, I see it absolutely all the time. And you mentioned a really key word, and that is adoption. Okay, with this technology. Now, there's two things to say here. It was only last week, Amazon CEO or whoever it was, someone powerful, we're going at their own conference, it's like, oh, we're going to be able to get rid of swathes of you because of AI. Isn't that tremendous? And then you wonder why there's a pushback, because if this becomes an existential crisis to you, of course there's going to be a pushback, and rightly so. Now, what worries me is that I talk a lot, I want augmentation, of course, and genuinely from my heart. So I talk about it so much, but I know it's being sold as replacement, because it's an easier sell for me to come into your company and to say, guess what? That department of 50, well, with my technology, you only need 10 of them. I'll tell you what, sack 40 of them, take my technology, and I'll take 50% of the savings. That's a really, really easy sell if it's true. Okay. Half the time it's proven to be nonsense, because of course what's happening is, under the guise of AI, for macroeconomic reasons, in my opinion, these large corporations that have overhired, overspent in this ridiculous growth at all costs, lunacy that we were in, are now using AI as an excuse to offload, their excessive spending. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, right, okay, we can sack half of you because AI is so fantastic, and then say, right, in the organization, we want you to adopt AI. And it's this juxtaposition that really, really annoys me. Firstly, because it's not realistic. But if you see governments, if you see legislation, if you see unions pushing back against them, who can blame them? Genuinely, who can blame them? But equally, where we're going to see the wipeout is in the actual knowledge sector, which was always felt to be impervious to these kind of automations and things like that. But the question comes is that, what are knowledge workers actually doing? Is it very creative, high strategy thinking? Is it the very human, context driven understanding and communication of these things within the organization? Or is it more like what digitalization was, which was the digital equivalent of the paper process? Now, if it is, unfortunately, it's ripe for disruption with these technologies like generative AI. And I think people are very aware of that, and they're seeing these two parallel stories play out. And I don't blame them for pushing back. And I don't play. And in fact, I won't mention the generation, because everybody's always down on that generation. It's a younger generation than me by far. Are pushing back, are rejecting it in the workplace, perhaps not in the personal sense. And in a sense, who can blame them? Because look at what they're facing and what they're being told in the media and in these press releases and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I've really preached there, but it is something I'm passionate about. And I probably have my own delusions. In fact, my wife, I always say to my wife, don't stop bursting my delusions. I'm happy in here. So of course I labor. I'm not in some kind of objective vacuum where I have no biases. Of course I do, but equally I do try to thread the needle as best I can to see it from both sides, and it is very, very frustrating. But yeah, that was a bit of a rant.
Yeah, no, I agree with you absolutely. And talk about headlines that, like, just headlines that distort the truth a lot of the times, that they miss the point by miles. And for people, in the aggregate, right? A lot of people don't read the article as
No.
just further than the headline
No.
itself. Let's face it. So a lot of the times I'm sending my friends tons of articles on the daily basis, right? So they're just reading the headline. Then when I'm asking about the substance, the answer is always like, nobody has time, right? And what we end up with, unfortunately, so a lot of the times is just the distortion of people's perception of what things really are. Not a lot of people have the luxury of time to immerse themselves, to research, to dig deeper, to get this, to get this knowledge for themselves. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And we end up with people who have a totally different idea of the state of things right now, right? Talk about instilling fear. People get this idea of, okay, it's either AGI, super intelligence thing, we're all gonna die and perish, we're all gonna be out of jobs, or it's just a different scenario. On the other side of the aisle are people who are looking at this technology as nothing more, as just like silly cat and dogs videos, and that's it. And again, this discrepancy and disparity, and this is either black or white type of situation. In this case, it's not helping anyone, because in the background, this technology is being spread wide.
Yeah.
And whether we want it or not, it's being adopted by
Yeah.
companies. A lot of the times, nobody's telling us anything. We're lucky enough if they publish or update their terms of service, nobody else gonna read it anyway. And it's just on and on and on. It's never gonna stop. So, I mean, talk about bursting bubbles, right? We won't even realize the impact of it for years to come. So what are we even to do? How can we as society, no pressure for today, for everyone, just how can we even grasp the idea of how can we be in control? Is there even a possibility to be in control of whatever you can be in control with, of your life? I don't know, of your just mentality as a just as an individual in a society.
Yeah.
Is there even an option today?
Do you know, I always do this. If I haven't got an answer, I'm not sure. I just confess that I do my little piece, but that's a very very difficult question to answer for the populace who are not immersed in this. Okay, you did it to me today. You say you share articles. You did it from the scientific to me this morning, and it was a fabulous one, which is AI thinks like a human. Absolute bunkum, a completely misleading headline coming from a respected journal that's been around since the 19th century. What can you do? How do you battle that? It's because, as you said, people, there may be tiny caveats and tiny bits deep buried within the article, but unfortunately, as you rightly say, people do not have time or the inclination, so they're just going to take that headline. And there are people that are making an awful lot of money and wanting to inflate a balloon through propagating these stories as well, for financial gain. And how you battle that, I don't know. I am a minnow in a sea. Now, you said also about the proliferation of the technology that won't, and the impacts of which may not be known for years. Now, that was a really, really interesting point, because when I talk about the potential wave of disruption coming to things like knowledge workers and things like that, often there'll be a pushback, which is, this happens with all technologies. You're just being a Luddite, come on, get with it. Okay, fair criticism. Well, actually, it's not, in my opinion, but I don't war with people anymore. I'm sort of too old for that. But the thing about it is that these technology waves are coming faster and faster and faster and faster. Okay, and the one that worries me is the speed of this. So, and what I call the transition period, and it's going to be between that part in which the true impact suddenly becomes clear, and that part in which a generation has to reskill, rethink, re-educate. Perhaps it could be on that scale. Okay, I'm not saying it will be, I'm just saying it could be. And I know there are plenty of people that are not hypists that I speak to privately that feel it will be on that scale. Okay. And it's that transition period that bothers me, because we're not prepared for it. I don't know how we get prepared for it. And I think it's going to sideswipe a staggering amount of people within the knowledge sector. I wouldn't put a timeline to it. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who actually put it as short as 18 months. I don't know. Okay. I'm not a prophet. I try to put the patterns together and see around the corner as best I can, but I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. But I do know that it's going to hit, and I don't believe we're going to be prepared for it. And there's going to be a very, very rough transition period. And I think that's what worries me. That's what I try to talk about. And I don't actually have the answers, again, because these are massive issues.
Yeah, Stuart, while you were ranting, I whipped up this slide real quick. So I hope you guys like the art. Disclaimer, that was produced by Copilot, obviously, or I
Yeah.
mean, could be any other thing. So what you guys said about the younger generation and like controlling this technology and what could have been done. I actually talked to my 20-year-old daughter about this, and this is just to get her perspective. It was very interesting because younger people are using Gen AI tools for everything. And her perspective was that she was asking a question why why this tech was unleashed on the society without like just with this broad access to everything, because she thought that it would make more sense to have small fine-tuned models based like on the industry specific ones of, let's say, for the medical field or like for the engineering field, and get and provide access to these models for the professionals who already learn their trade and have certain knowledge and expertise, and they would be using those tools to enhance their productivity as opposed to just let it out in the wild and let people play with it. And I think this is probably speaks to one of our top points where we wanted to discuss, and that's the eternal one, right? So like regulation versus innovation, that's kind of Hamletian dilemma. Should it be open or closed, source, and who will be defining our reality moving forward? Yeah, it's just kind of throwing my 2 cents in there, because I did have that conversation with a person who is like 25 plus younger than me, right? 25 years plus younger than me. And this is going to be their reality. And yeah.
Yeah, we cannot discount the wisdom of the young, can we? Sometimes they're far more perceptive than many that have been around for as long as me. Just a quick comment then, if I may. Small language models that your daughter mentioned are the absolute future. Domain specific, on a very tight corpus of data, that are, and this actually suits the agentic systems very, very well. Okay. They will be the productivity sweet spot. I've got no doubt about that personally in my mind. But what has been done to us is we have been brought into what I call the generalizable paradigm, which is the massive large language model, the one that has gobbled up the entire corpus of knowledge on the internet, if we can call it that, and has created this sophistication of speech, be it synthetic or not. Actually, they will not be so useful, and that's why we will see a proliferation of smaller domain specific models come into production, very tailored around experts and very specific to industries, and especially industry verticals, and that's where we'll see this productivity sweet spot, is in that vertical. But what we have at the moment is more horizontal, and for the agentic systems, the horizontal ones don't work so well, especially if you have a monolithic, just one trying to do a lot of different agentic activities. That is already proving to fail. We're seeing cascading failure modes, but we can potentially have small language models that can deal with these things individually and hand them over to each other, which is proving to be probably the route forward. But this generalizable paradigm that we're in with these massive large language models, they have people. Oh man, I'm going to sound like a conspiracist if I say this, so I'm not going to say it. I'll just leave it there.
No, now you have to say it.
Oh
That's
man.
not how lives work, Stuart.
Oh man. Okay. Right. Listen. So people are flabbergasted at things like the money that is being poured into large language models. Okay. These very, very massive, large, it's billions, it's trillions. Let's start up nuclear reactors, and they're looking at the path to profitability and they're just like, man, this economics doesn't work out. This is not about productivity. And the more people that you speak to behind the scenes, including from some of those companies, the more you begin to realize that this isn't necessarily the game, because this is potentially about something different. And it was wondrous that Elon Musk came out and just said it. It was awesome. It was about a week ago. It went viral on my post because I was supposed to go out with my wife, and she was like, get off LinkedIn, and I was just going to leave, and then I saw Elon Musk tweet. I was just like, I can't go anywhere. I've got to go on LinkedIn. I won't be a sec, and because he literally said it. He said, yeah, we will. Him and Grok, of course, yeah, presumably, rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge, deleting errors and adding stuff that's missing. Well, that is a fantastic statement right there, because right there you get to the core of it, which is the shaping of reality. It's the subtle shifting of thought. Now, you could say, well, this has been going on for a long time with the digital world or with media. Well, actually, we had quite a lot of choice with media. I mean, if I was left wing, I could go there. If I was right wing, I could go there. If I was in the middle, I could go there. I could kind of reinforce my bias wherever I wanted. But if you have one, two, maybe three absolute giants that the world chooses between, these things can shift perception, because once upon a time, Google, that was an ancient search engine, by the way. What it used to do is you used to go online and you'd search for something and you'd see a website and then you'd go to that website. Okay. It was very antiquated technology now. That was a search engine, but of course now we've got answer engines, so we don't need to go to the original source. In other words, the original source is now starved. We have the rent-seeking middleman in the large language model. Okay, now that means, and most people don't go off to these links to double check them. I'm just going to say that because I've been very guilty of it myself when it doesn't really matter. But we are fairly lazy as a race. So we do tend to kind of gobble this information up. Now it can be shaped now and shifted, which means that they could start to actually shape our thoughts and perceptions of reality. Now that is a much more interesting financial proposition in terms of pure power play than a productivity suite for the enterprise. And Elon Musk, I could imagine Sam Altman and Meta Zuckerberg. Sort of as soon as Elon Musk tweeted it, thinking, for goodness sake, use your indoor voice, man. We've been telling you not to say this out loud, because there is something quite profound here that's never happened before, which is to be able to control, knowledge in its entirety, and how most people consume. Because going away and reading books, who needs to read a book when it can just be summarized through? But whose view? No world model, no encapsulation of this is bias free. It's impossible. So it encapsulates somebody's view of the world, whose and why. So yeah, I know that's very conspiratorial, but yeah, it's something me and many others have been talking about in the background. And yeah.
I don't care. Just my 2 cents, just quickly. I don't think it's some of it is not really conspiratorial at all. It's about how the US is playing it out. About it's a matter of national security. So the US versus China AI race.
Yep.
These are literally the words the US Congress members are saying, and they are explicitly saying that as just things as follows. We need to win this AI race because the world needs to adopt US AI models, not China AI models, the US AI models. They don't want to deal with DeepSeek. That's why DeepSeek was banned from the government use.
Yep.
as a technology, because everybody's scared. Obviously, everybody now bubble knows that DeepSeek comes with a lot of baggage from the Chinese Communist Party in terms of all the red tape that there is. You ask it a question, it's not going to answer certain questions about the government, etc., because it's been heavily guarded, so to speak, right? So at the end of the day, it's about whose model wins.
Yep.
And who will be able to shape that reality. It's not that far-fetched, because it's already been happening in real time. And from what I'm seeing is a lot of countries who can afford it, they are working on developing their own LLMs, their own models that are tailored to the context and the history and to everything of that particular country. For example, South Korea has been working on Clover since 2021.
Yep.
They just upgraded it. It's their own culture specific and targeted to their culture. Russia, as well as obviously China and all those countries, different countries, right? So everybody's working on their own national LLM, kind of just not to be left behind and not to be dominated and devoured by this one powerful LLM to rule them all, so to speak, right? Because that's essentially is the race. It's about power. It's always been about power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just sorry, Stuart. I'm reading through the comments here because we actually hope have folks comment in real life. And Carrie, you're reading my mind, because that's exactly what I thought when we started talking about who's defining reality. Because how supposedly monks in medieval times in Europe, they were sitting down in monasteries and just rewriting Aristotle, right? So presumably, maybe. So we don't really know. I mean, I think that just rewriting history or like defining your own reality is nothing specifically new. It's just now that we have this awesome tools to do it, and they're total out of control. And it's really, I think it will be up to people to educate themselves, and even know that they have the option to educate themselves, because sometimes you just go to the computer and basically, hey computer, Siri, ask, answer this question, and people take that as a ultimate sort of truth. But I think now, basically starting in middle school, as of maybe 12, 13, people have to be educated about those things. I mean, um, and it's going to be very tough, because we used to read books, we used to go to the library, and there was so much to learn. But now I think there's even more. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like a firm believer in education, but I just don't really see what will be the alternative way to teach people and raise the generation of folks who are actually aware of these issues, and they can make decisions for themselves. Um, it is very difficult. So yeah, and remember that awesome movie, The Name of the Rose. You guys, you saw that with Sean Connery and young, Christians later. They were sitting in that monastery in, like, 12th century, and so yeah, it's just kind of digressing, but great movie if you want to see it. Going back to our, you know, the defining the reality, and all those things. So
You raised such an important point when you mentioned children, because there's no denying there's a push to put this into education as fast as possible, from the giant technological bear moths. And what concerns me about it is that, as a relatively sane and fully formed adult, I kind of, I know who I am. I understand when I'm interacting with ChatGPT, and sometimes it even lulls me in, about this kind of not connecting too much with it. It is the mirror in the machine. It doesn't have thought and cognition, and sort of, I have that understanding of what I'm relating to. Children don't. We're talking about something that actually talks back, and a child's mind, they're not just discovering themselves, they're discovering their place in the world. And now they're going to have a machine narrating to them about their potential, who they are, and what they should think, and what their potential place is in the world, and even in terms of their own identity. And we've never seen that before. This is new. And this is why people like Lego corporations like Lego, in association with academic research, are starting to put out research that's, sort of beginning to alert to these issues that are currently unknown. So, as I said, I was around when the internet was born, and I was before that era too. So, but obviously my children were digital natives. And actually, ironically, there's an irony there. They probably got a healthier relationship with social media and digital technology than I do. But anyway, let's hope it works like that. But what does the AI native generation look like? We don't know. Actually, we don't know how the formation of their mind, being imprinted by the machine. And part of the problem here is that, and this goes back to what Elena sent me earlier, is this anthropomorphization of the whole industry chain of thought. Well, it doesn't think. Reasoning, it doesn't reason. All of this terminology, and I've been rightly pulled up for anthropomorphizing in posts, and by way of explanation, not excuse, I'm trying to communicate to people that are not immersed necessarily in our world things that I can only do by leaning on a common language. And I hate myself for doing that. But when we're talking about children that are being sort of enmeshed in this world, and we're talking about this blurring of the line between the machine and the human, I don't know how that impacts on their psychology and their cognition, and nobody does. So I just wanted to just highlight how important it is to bring children into this discussion.
Yeah, I agree. I was just thinking, maybe for next one we'll bring our kids, Elisa. We'll talk to them about this tech, right? Because I mean, yours
Yeah.
are old enough to form very, very eloquent
y-
opinions. Mine are a little
it's
younger, but
interesting.
still.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I have a 20-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they're 7 years apart. But I mean, I do have these conversations with them, like with my 13-year-old son, like about, you know, um, AI and the machine and the human, and like neuroplasticity, and watching the movies. We're actually up to watch Blade Runner. I think he's old enough to actually manage that. But it's also basically explaining to them in a kind of simple terms, because some of those things can be explained. Like Stuart, you were talking about, machine is not thinking. So we just basically explain it to them. And we're going to have this talk point now, but I know we also discussed during our prep call is about there is a opinion in academia right now that LLMs are actually near the end. So we're kind of heading into that cul-de-sac, if you will, in terms of transformer architecture. And this is with respect to the text only. I'm talking about the text. So we will go just as far enough. So which means that there will be some sort of, I guess, threshold that this architecture, this tech won't be able to kind of pass that threshold, right? So it will be very limited at a certain point. And I think this is something that we can also explain to, to people who are relying on this technology so much, that at some point there might be an end to this. And if we're talking about intelligence, I mean, it's kind of hard to define intelligence by itself, but if you can't define intelligence, how you can define artificial intelligence, so forth. So yeah, I think this is also, and I think that also speaks to Stuart, your point about economics earlier, is like, if architecturally and from the engineering standpoint, it will hit a wall at some point. Like, how can you like spend $9 billion to make $4 billion, like on this tech? So it's like, where we're going with all of this. But yeah, lots of hype.
Yeah, and just in terms of that hitting the wall, obviously there's divided opinion on that.
Mhm.
I'm of the opinion that we will hit a wall, but we have to remember that the seeds of one S curve of innovation, so becomes the seeds for the next curve of innovation. So we see it in a layered fashion. In terms of pure raw compute power along the mathematics that we have now underpinning the deep learning mechanisms, we're never, I believe, oh, sorry, this is anecdotal, my own opinion, we're never going to go from that to this like raw, just by brute force, to AGI and super intelligence. You know, I don't believe that's going to happen. But could it potentially sow the seeds for the future? Okay, well that's a different question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm probably not the right expert for it. But I will just caveat this by saying, if the entire industry said we've hit a wall, that's the end of it, we can't do any more with this technology, people like me in product probably and you know, working on small language models and agentic systems, we probably have 15 years in front of us to really kind of take a breath and work out how we re-engineer workflows, organizations and so forth in order to be able to actually make the best use of this technology. So even if it hits that scaling wall, there's so much we can do with this that's yet undiscovered, or in terms of real reprocess organization and all the rest of it. And so it's kind of, it doesn't matter to me if it has hit a scaling or not. I don't believe we'll make that. I think it's a myth. There's a chasm between superintelligence and AGI. I'm not really a big believer in all of that, if I'm honest, and you probably see that from my posts. But I'm not going to discount anything for the distant future. But yeah. So even if we do.
Stuart, you literally said what I was thinking about. Even as Elisa said, right, we hit a wall and tomorrow, I don't know, all LLMs are banned, the research is banned, everybody's just doing nothing, everything's stopped. We have a lot on our plate already.
Mm-hmm.
A lot for the impact to be so great, we won't be even able to tell decades from now, because we have a lot to deal with as of today. And nobody's saying the research stops tomorrow, right? But that's just, that's the scenario. And about the AGI and ASI topic, what's interesting, and you, Stuart, said, and I'm not really a believer in all of that. Okay, the AGI is near, the ASI, artificial superintelligence, is literally next round ahead, right? It's like so close, we need to do something about it. But the thing is, our government is already talking about it. I'm talking about the US government, the US Congress, the recent congressional hearing that took place. The word ASI was mentioned literally tens of times, like dozens of times during that meeting. And we're talking about people in Congress. They are thinking about it already. There's a talk about the new bill that would be proposed that would be called ASI Safety Act or something to that extent. So essentially, even if we don't believe in it, I think wheels are already in motion in order to prepare for it, or to lay the ground for it. I don't know, it's like this, the chicken and the egg kind of thing. What's gonna come faster at this point? You know what, it came while we were talking, it came like remember the first Matrix movie when he went to the seer and when he broke the vase type of thing, when he left, she knew he would break the vase or something. That was it, right? And when he asked her, like,
I know this movie by heart.
Let me know
if you've seen.
So, yeah, and so he was like, so you knew that I was gonna break it. Why didn't you tell me that? Or if you told me that, and her response was like, if I told you that, would you still do it? Or it's like,
yeah,
what's gonna happen? That's how inarticulate I am right now, trying to explain my thought process as of right now. So when it comes to ASI and AGI, is it that we're thinking it's so close, not we, but some people, that they're gonna bring it upon us just by way of like, okay, we're gonna imagine it's here, so we're gonna take something like the next step, next iteration, that it's ASI. Who defines ASI anyway? It's smarter than what? That your average human, that you're, I don't know, Einstein type human who's smarter than a 5-year-old, just kind of, there's a gradient, there's a spectrum. So for like here, 10 years ago, if we introduced something like that, people would have already said this ASI, it's okay. Hands down, the end of the world is near, so we'll give up, right? So, but kind of the goalpost keeps moving, and I have no idea what I'm talking about right now at this point, but or even the point I was trying to make.
I know
But
the
I
point you were
guess
trying
it's.
to make. You're talking about
Please tell me, Stuart.
I'll articulate it for you. It's clear to me. You're talking about
Thank you.
a self-fulfilling prophecy. Humans are absolutely incredible. I think it every time I get in an aeroplane. I'm like, what the heck? How did they do this? This is astonishing. I'm flying through the air. With with a degree of determination and a self-fulfilling prophecy, it is astonishing what we could potentially achieve. Okay, and things like artificial general intelligence and artificial super, these things. I'm not like, this isn't a faith thing for me. I'm not like, I don't believe it can happen. It potentially could happen. I don't know what the timeline is. Humans are remarkable. In fact, one of the things that delights me the most about this large language model technology is how it forces us, or at least me and all my posts, to reflect on the marvel of us, which is the nature of intelligence and our own cognitive abilities. And what is empathy? What is emotion? What is thinking? What is it to be? And even as far as to what is it to embody a soul? Because what we're looking at is a reflection, a mirror in the machine, reflecting us back. It forces us to ask incredible questions about ourselves. Well, at least it does me. From that, I love philosophy and the social sciences. Believe it or not, that's my background. So that's kind of probably why I think like this. So you're talking about a self-fulfilling prophecy. There is, like when you have this degree of money and attention on this technology, you start to think, yeah, maybe they'll make it happen. Yeah, maybe this is possible. It's gonna take a fundamental leap in the underlying mathematics. I'm no quantum expert. My goodness, I spoke to someone this morning. I was like, yeah, you can reform quantum. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, you start to imagine fusions of these things, and you're like, yeah, okay, I don't really want to know anymore. Of the sort of potentials of what's possible. Okay, so I think that governments thinking about these things, think tanks thinking about these things, the implications, the potential impact, what does this mean for us as a race? I think that's great. I applaud it. I just don't, if it becomes a sort of political weapon of those with economic power to drive hype and economic cycles that involve bubbles and bursts, because that damages everybody. And of course, it'd be a shame to have a too much of an AI winter, because as I say, we'll throw away a lot of what we have achieved, which would be a terrible shame. But yeah, that's kind of what I felt you were articulating.
Yeah, that was the Oracle scene, Elena, when Neo comes to the Oracle, and
Did you Google it?
the one, and also there is no spoon, right? So um yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, Stuart, I really wanna hear your thoughts on this, A2A agent protocols, because, well, I mean, I just came from the Linux Foundation Open Source Summit in Denver, and of course agentic stuff was like the hot topic. It was in the keynotes and things like that. But before we even think about AGI, whatever that means, we just need the systems, those little, gears to work together to even like get to, perform a task that normal human would do, like across like different domains, right? And I think this is like, yeah, yeah, I would be interested to hear what you have to say on this topic. Um,
Thanks so much for bringing us back down to earth. I really appreciate that.
there is no
Um,
spoon still.
I really appreciate it. The agents need protocols. I think that's probably the most important work that's happening right now. So, I mean, like, if you imagine the internet system that we have at the moment, obviously, if I put Google in, I type it in natural language, but behind the scene is the DNS system, all the routing systems, the border gateway, all these protocols that are kind of getting me to the appropriate server to return the appropriate response. These protocols are already in place. Now imagine agents. Now there's no way I'm going to make the the agent that does everything. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have interoperating agents. So, Elena has an agent that books something, and I have an agent that goes off and does the next part of the holiday, whatever it is. They will need to be able to find each other and to be able to interoperate with each other, and even do financial transactions and maybe micro transactions between each other. This is enormously complex, and they need a way to simply find each other and probably rate each other, so that I know that Elena's agent is in fact trustworthy and is going to part with the cash and give me my due recompense and what have you. So these things need so we're seeing like they're seeing like the same similar protocols that are for the internet being proposed for agents. But it's going to be actually probably a lot more complex than that, because there's going to be so many firstly from a security perspective, from a micro payments perspective, from a trust perspective. I mean, once you start reading the research papers on this, it goes on and on and on and on and on. But that architecture will need to be there. Not only that, it will need to be agreed upon and widely accepted. These things tend to happen by a sort of a period of acceptance and then evolution. And we're seeing the birth of this with agentic protocols. They need to break out and become very, very widely accepted. So there's a way to go yet, but that's going to need to be in place. And just let me say, when I talk about agents, is that ability to be able to, bring the power of large language models or small language models into our workflows. But again, as soon as we do that, we offload, a scary amount, because we will have to give these agents, for example, domain admin access to all of our private information, all of our financial, to be able to do these transactions on them, be able to make these decisions on our behalf. And that does concern me from a hacker perspective, because if you own the agent, you own the kingdom at that point. So there's so much to consider that people are not considering. So when you see 2025 is a year of agents, I don't even know where to begin with it all, and I do try to convey this in a sort of chirpy way if I can. I mean, I did a post the other day that had 22 different categories of sort of of known attack surfaces, for agentic systems. Currently, these are just what known. We're going to discover a lot more. We need to just tread carefully, where angels fear to tread. So yeah, but there's a lot. There's when people say, oh, it's a year of agents, yes and no. This is going to evolve, but a lot of this still needs to be figured out and agreed and adopted.
And can you just say a few words? I know we have like a few minutes left, but there's been a lot of confusion, as with everything else in this space. Agents, AI agents, and agentic AI. And at least I've seen a ton of people misconstruing stuff, and it just, the definitions are all over the place. So can you just briefly walk us through?
I've done posts on this. I wish I could have known that, because I would much rather read a very, very. I sort of tried to distill it into like one sentence, because if I try to do it off the top of my head, I will err. And somebody will say, well, no, actually, because there's so many ways to err with this. And some people just think the whole discussion is nonsense and irrelevant. As soon as I start talking about these things, people say, well, you're talking about, I don't know, robotic process automation. Oh, we had that in the 80s. This is all exactly the same. So it's such a minefield at the moment. And it's funny. And the reason why I'm being so cautious on this is because language matters much more than people realize. So I'm not sure I want to wade into that without having that very specific thing I sort of rested upon and was confident in.
Absolutely, we can just link post a link.
I'll find the post. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
people
yeah.
are interested, yeah, no problem. Yeah. I hope people found this interesting. I'm sorry to folk that are listening if it was a bit of a downer. When Vin and I do it, somebody, because we go very honest like this and very sort of candid and try and get away from the hyper talk honestly. And somebody DM'd me and said, I spent half of the episode really depressed and half of it crying with laughter. And I don't really know how to get away from that, because there are so many heavy issues. I put at the end of the post last week, because I feel like the curmudgeon of the AI world, and it's kind of like, I'm sure I used to be fun, Honestly, I love this technology. I'm incredibly bullish on it. I've invested in startups. I've bet the farm on it. But we can't get away from these heavy topics, unfortunately. So apologies to everybody that's listening if some of that was a bit of a downer.
We're not here to
tough love, Stuart. Tough love.
Yeah, we're not here to entertain people all the time. Just like 5% of the time. Rest of the time is
Edutainment.
rest of the time it's just the stuff we want to force on them, essentially. So that's what we did today. I'm pretty sure we did a brilliant job today. I loved it. So me personally, it was great.
That's all
I feel very energized and very optimistic for some reason. Don't ask me why.
Good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stuart, for your time, and Alisa for waking up early. It's 9 a.m. where you are already. So
2 a.m.
Thank you.
Are you kidding me right now? 8 a.m. Wake up at 6. These are the perks of getting older, and you just don't want to waste your time on sleep, right? Because there's just so much to read about agentic AI, whatever happening with like DeepSeek, or I don't know, all those things.
I get up at 4 a.m. to do the research.
Yeah,
you have to. I don't know how else to keep up with it. 4 a.m.
Well, it's just I don't know, take a walk in the woods, before.
Amen. Feel the grass. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Sounds like a good tip. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stuart. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for the comments. They were very, very active today.
Yeah, very engaging audience today. Thank you, guys. We'll try to address some of those maybe on LinkedIn later, and I'll post a couple of links as well. I wanted to the GitHub link. To the Google's A2A protocol, but it wouldn't let me. So I'll do it later.
Okay. We're wrapping this up. Thank you so much once again, Stuart. I really hope we get to do it next time.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, we will.
Yes, we're not gonna let you go so easily. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.